Hello everyone, ZainabRights here, and I'm joined by the lovely sister Zahraa Makki.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Zahraa Makki, and I am currently a student at the American University of Beirut, completing a master's degree in philosophy. I've been living in Lebanon for the past 2.5 years. Previously, I had lived in the States. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation with Zainab.
Thank you so much. So today's topic it's an interesting one because I'm usually talking politics. But as many of you are aware, I love speaking about religion, spirituality, faith. These are all important things to my own heart. And I think especially today when so much is going on in our world, I think I speak for many of us when I say we're all kind of feeling restless. When it comes to spirituality, trying to understand our purpose in the world, and then sometimes feeling quite overwhelmed. And so I think that today's day and age, a lot of things are overlapping, and with so many wars and oppression and global injustice, we're basically feeling like maybe we can't do much in terms of when it comes to healing ourselves or healing the world. And then we get stuck, at least for me, we get stuck in this rut of like, well, I can't do much. I'm just one person.
I feel like the restlessness that we all feel is actually very natural given the state of the world, the oppression, the injustice that's taking place all around us. And honestly, if we're not feeling restless over these things, then this is actually when we have to step back and check ourselves. There's a hadith by the Holy Prophet where he states, "Man asbaha wa amsa wa lam yahtam bi umur al-muslimin falaysa bi Muslim." Whomsoever wakes and goes to sleep without thinking about his brothers and sisters in faith is not a Muslim. And so this restlessness hopefully should be a natural byproduct of the consciousness of the oppression that's going on in the world. But I think that it's not something we're doomed to. Actually, it's something that we can cultivate and channel to heal both ourselves and our community.
Is this feeling of being stuck in this rat race, is this normal?
Unfortunately, it's rampant, but it's not normal. I think that we're currently in a society that champions being busy as though it's something that's extremely admirable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, really, our busyness is killing us on the inside without us realizing, and we're becoming more and more heedless of the purpose for which we were actually created, the purpose for which we were actually supposed to be pursuing all the things that we're pursuing. But it seems that everything that we're going after, everything that we're busy with, is actually at the forefront of our endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
And our souls are slowly being neglected, and we're not cognizant of that fact.
Mm-hmm.
When everything that we're supposed to go out in the world and search for is supposed to be subservient to our souls. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have it flipped in a sense.
So, when it comes to, for example, my own work, right? I feel sometimes overwhelmed at how much work there is to do in the world and justice, and it's like it's never ending, right? How do you balance that aspect of trying to take on the world and also caring for yourself and your soul? Where is like the line, I guess?
Well, the first thing is we have to realize this is not a one-person project. Mm-hmm. The kind of things that are going around in the world require us to mobilize as communities and as nations. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the question isn't so much as how do we relieve the world of suffering as one person, but how do we connect with other people and mobilize other people and create a sort of environment where our communities are coming together and working towards this cause. So how do we mobilize the people that are around us? How do we mobilize our own communities to start being advocates for all the people that are suffering oppression around the world? So I think taking it upon yourself to relieve the world of suffering is really placing yourself under a lot of heaviness. Mm-hmm. When honestly this project is supposed to be us doing it together. We're supposed to be feeling this together. We're supposed to be going through this together, and we should be channeling this pain into the world in a way that actually comes back and heals us.
Mm-hmm. And the flip side, what do you say to the apathy of many people who, let's say, just don't want to act. I feel maybe they get overwhelmed. They feel that they can't do much. They maybe even feel numb to whatever's happening, and they can't really relate. Um, so that there's also that responsibility, not just from a moral standpoint, but like you said, a believer feels that pain for other people around the world. So how do we also, drive ourselves to mobilize and to act in unity towards these causes?
I think the first thing is to realize that there's no one method of advocacy. If you're someone who isn't so good at public speaking, but you're a great writer, I mean, your pen is your form of advocacy. If you're a painter, your brush is a form of advocacy. You can be supporters of the oppressed by simply tapping into your own unique talents and seeing what you can use that for and how you can cultivate that in such a way that you're instilling more good in the world. It's not just about taking away evil. Sometimes instilling more good and more beauty in the world is a form of advocacy. And so it's about really just tapping into that and saying, okay, what can I offer? Because as people who are endowed with various unique talents, we have a responsibility to use those talents in support of others. We're one nation, we're one Ummah. And so every single person who's watching this has something that they can offer, whether they know it yet or not. And I think just a moment of reflection will make you realize that there's so much that you can do. There's so much power within you. You have a voice, you have talent, you have eyes that see, you have ways in which you can speak and hear and relay that to others, whether it's one-on-one conversations, if that's what you like to do, or whether it's to the public, whether it's through your art, whatever it is, we all have our own platforms and we can use those.
But do you feel like this time is a remnant of the time of the advent of the Imam Mahdi? Some people say the second coming of the Messiah. What do you feel is this time near and near, or has it always been near and we can't really know when that time will come?
Actually, I was speaking about this to my husband last night. We watched this movie called 1917, a great movie, highly recommend, and it's about the World War. And we were thinking about how we've had a pretty brutal history. I mean, if you look at the timeline of history, there's been so much bloodshed, so much pain, so much oppression, so much suffering, between like just past 100, 150 years. I mean, like Malcolm X only died 50, 55 years ago. I mean, that's not so long ago. The civil rights movements, the rights of women to vote or to own property, the Black rights movement, the Trail of Tears. I mean, our history has been really drawn in blood. And there's been so much oppression and so much pain. But I feel like this time is different because I feel like there's this unique awareness, I feel that's growing, sort of second consciousness that people are starting to have, where the era of accepting blindly the news is over, where the era of just sort of soaking everything in that Fox News or CNN tells us is over. People are actually, regardless of race, regardless of border or class or nation, they're starting to realize that, hey, the things that my government are doing are pretty messed up. And I think that this is actually a huge stride forward because maybe the suffering and the injustice is continuous, but the awareness hasn't been. I mean, if we look at 1400 years ago, for example, at the time of the Prophet, or even after, there lived probably one of the greatest saints that the world ever knew. And his name was Hussein ibn Ali. And he stood alongside his 72 companions and he asked the people, is there anyone that could assist us? Is there anyone that would assist the family of the Holy Prophet? And they stood before an army of thousands that wanted to battle them, that were coincidentally also Muslims. And he looked at them and he said, don't you know who I am? I am the grandson of that prophet you claim to be following. And they look at him and say, we don't understand what you're saying. And they truly did not. They were so blind, so blinded by their own greed that they couldn't even see the man standing before them. Now I feel the tides are changing. People are starting to realize, people are starting to wake up. They're seeing the hypocrisy of their leaders. And I wouldn't underestimate how powerful that is. And I think just the past month, that's become really evident to a lot of us.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. What can we do then to harness this, I guess, second, consciousness to kind of really just further ourselves in, the pursuit of truth?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. And I think that a lot of us need to ask this for ourselves. And your question is probably going to be very unique to where you are in your journey and who you are as a person. But this thing that we're talking about, this spiritual awareness or awakening that we're talking about, can only happen if we're first aware. We can never be spiritually awakened if we're not aware. And that starts off by asking the right questions. And questions revolving: who am I? What is my purpose in life? And why am I here? Those fundamental questions that we somehow stopped asking ourselves somewhere along the line. Those are a great start. If we want to be people of truth, if we want to be people who are on the right side of history, we have to first be in alignment with ourselves. And that's the only way to really journey to God, is to first be in alignment with oneself. And that starts off with really just asking questions, and not to the world, but starting off by asking yourself, like, why am I here? And what am I doing with my life? And, it might be uncomfortable to sit with yourself and sort of face yourself in that way, in that sober way, in that direct way, but it's the only way forward. Spiritual awakening cannot be divorced from awareness.
Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting topic, because a lot of the countries that are being oppressed, or the people that are being oppressed, are Muslim lands. And I think there's a huge identity crisis when it comes to Muslims in the West, who have this attachment towards their brothers and sisters in those parts of the world. And then they see their governments, waging war and occupying their lands and building bases and sending their troops there. How can we align ourselves, would be like your viewpoint on that, I guess, to eliminate this confusion that many people have?
Yeah, I think I was one of those people who felt very torn by everything that's going on, and all of it happening under the hands of my own government. And it's a difficult state to be in, but always we say that the government and the people are two different entities, and they're not to be confused. And I think that as people living in the West, we are actually living in privilege. We're privileged to be where we are, and we're benefiting a lot from where we are. And so I think as Muslims, it's our responsibility to use that privilege and be voices for the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would be very unfair for us to benefit from living where we live, while our government perpetrates all this pain and sanctions and suffering and killing upon these people who are our brothers and our sisters, who are our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really have to check our privilege first and foremost, and then see, okay, how can I make up for it, if you will? How can I really be in solidarity with my brothers and sisters that are on the other side of the world while living in this land? What can I do? What kind of protests can I arrange? What kind of letters can I be sending to my local or state government? How can I partake in politics in a way that maybe would raise awareness and change certain policies? There's numerous ways to do it, but so long as we're doing something, and we're conscious of that fact of our privilege, I think that's a step forward.
You raised a very interesting point. You said there are our family, and I'm sure if our father, like our siblings or our father and mothers, were occupied and killed and jailed, we would feel a sense of responsibility, and obviously our hearts would be out there, right? What can we do? Like, I feel like there's a spiritual element to this feeling of love for Ummah and even for humanity in general. What can we do to increase that love within us, where we feel that pain, and empathize with them, even though they might not be our blood relations?
I think the first step towards empathy is feeling pain, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you don't know what to do with it, even if you feel helpless. The first step is to really realize what's going on. Scroll through those images if you need to, scroll through that article if you need to. Yeah, it might, ruin your day or ruin your morning or ruin your coffee time, but you have to let yourself feel these things. Otherwise, your heart will go numb. So the first thing is feel the pain. Cultivate that pain. It's not something bad. It's something that you want to use to channel. And so I think that empathy starts with pain, feeling pain. And afterwards, I feel that there's always going to be a sense of connectedness between us. And that's always something that we can use to our advantage. Love, not hate. Love one another and use that to pursue causes of justice. Don't do it through hate, do it through love. I feel like that's a much more binding force, and it transcends boundary, race, color, religion. And I think it's a dispositional, innate force within us. We're born as creatures of love. We like to be one and in solidarity and in unity with one another because we share so much in common. And, it's interesting. I feel like the past month, that solidarity was more evident. I feel people were coming together, especially after what happened in Iran and Iraq and, the United States impinging on another country's sovereignty and things of that sort. You felt like, well, all sorts of people were coming to call this out, even rappers, musicians, Christians, non-Christians, Muslims.
So a huge, I guess, especially in journalism and media, we have a lot of elements of, how do you know the truth? Truth could be very subjective. History could be written by the people who, won. So how do we, like, as Muslims, and not even just Muslims, but as spiritual beings, as people of consciousness, how do we decipher the truth from falsehood when increasingly the media, like, even though the trust for media is at an all-time low, you can still see how, all of this doubt and all of this falsehood mixed in with truth is created. And either people don't know what to believe anymore, or we really can't tell apart the truth from falsehood. So what is, from your opinion, what's, I guess, the prophetic advice for those of us who are living in these times?
Actually, the prophetic advice, you reminded me of a hadith that the Prophet actually sort of says for these sort of times. He says that when events come upon you that resemble the darkness of the night, then hold on to the Quran. Meaning, when the commotion, when the atrocities, when so much is happening around you and it's so hard to decipher light from darkness, evil from good, the Prophet advises us to return to the Quran. So the first thing is, we can't be people who are moved emotionally by waves. We see one headline on CNN and we're suddenly outraged. We see another conflicting headline at Fox and we're simultaneously outraged. I think it's Imam Ali who says that, know the truth and you will know its people. So the first thing that this whole journey towards advocacy starts with is really ourselves, and really soul searching first and foremost, and asking and critically evaluating the world around us. And so first of all, as advocates, we can't be advocates that are sort of whimsical about our advocacy. We have to have a very deep sense of principles and a worldview that's very solid, and that comes with first cultivating certain attributes in ourselves. So first, our critical thinking skills. You have to be very intellectual. We can't merely be emotionally moved, because then we'll just be sort of bouncing headline to headline without any purpose or clarity as to what we're actually pushing forward. And really tapping into our sense of value, our own value system. So I think first and foremost, to know the truth is to start by knowing yourself and knowing what you stand for, knowing your own history, knowing the history of the Holy Prophet and his family and what they stood for, and seeing what values you can internalize from these principles that you abstract. So I feel personally, when advocacy is divorced from self-improvement, it becomes a very dangerous thing. And so if we really want to be true in our advocacy, we have to first be true in our knowledge of self and God, and really our understanding of religion.
But some will look at all of this and say, oh, why bother? That's so much work. Critical thinking, studying history, like why should we, why can't people resort to the simple life, or the simple life in that sense where you just focus on what's in front of you and that's it?
Yeah. It's not really your choice, right? So it's actually in your nature. I don't think it's a simple life to just look at what's in front of you. You actually have to, I think what's more truer to our nature is to actually be self-reflective people. And if we want to live a life where we're just sort of looking at what's in front of us and just going with the flow, deep down, we're always going to feel a sense of emptiness, because our fitra, our innate moral disposition, our sort of moral compass that we were all created with, and that's instilled in all of us, is always sort of pushing you to evaluate and look around you, and really drawing you towards truth and being an advocate for the oppressed. It's a voice that's never going to leave you alone. And so I think turning away from it is actually going to subject you to a lot more misery and sadness than actually turning towards that voice and seeing what it's trying to tell you. And like I said, advocacy can't be divorced from self-improvement. And so that time that you're going to take to actually look into yourself and ask yourself the important questions regarding what you believe and what your worldview looks like, that's really the most truest and highest form of self-care. And so if we really want people who are really taking care of ourselves, we have to start turning towards these questions. And it's going to definitely be uncomfortable at first, because a lot of us have sort of become numb. We have a lifestyle that sort of allows us to become numb and busy and turn away from our hearts when it doesn't feel comfortable to face it. But it's something that we have to sort of get past so that the real work can start happening.
Yeah. And like, as much as I don't want to let you go, I guess it would be apt to conclude our conversation with the topic that we started off with, and then I probably went on a tangent. But the topic of self-healing and healing the world, I think more and more of us need to become healers. Especially here in the West, we're just, we're consumed in this like mentality that, especially our government is, pillaging and oppressing, and obviously it has nothing to do with what we believe, right? But we have become sort of like, okay, this is happening and we can't really do much about it. And like you said, the point of positivity and healing and love, how do we, heal ourselves, and then how do we heal the world?
Yeah, so a lot of times we're asking the questions, how do we get rid of this pain? Because it's too much to carry around. And I guess this might not really be the answer, but it's just my opinion. It's not I don't think healing from the pain. I think we should be asking, how do we cultivate it? Because the pain is that one thing that's keeping us awake. Otherwise, I feel like it's so easy to slip off into comfort and heedlessness. Actually, there's a very beautiful passage in Dua and Nutba, which is a supplication that we recite in the absence of the 12th Imam. And let me just maybe pull up the passage for you, because I found it to be very beautiful, where you ask, is there any helper with whom I may lament and bewail as much as I wish? Is there any aggrieved one whom I can help in grief when he becomes tired of his grief? And so here, we're actually asking God for a companion that we can share this sorrow with. And it just goes to show that this pain is not something we're supposed to be carrying on our own. It's supposed to be something that we should be carrying together. And in that togetherness, in that carrying that pain together, there is healing. And so this is something that is a community project. We have to sit with one another. We have to have coffee. We have to talk about things. We have to be brothers and sisters, and we really have to be a family. So we have to sit out in nature. We have to be more in touch with ourselves. We have to be more in touch with our brothers and sisters. And in that sort of community advocacy, sort of the pain is being cultivated into healing. And so it's sort of an oxymoron. But the pain really is a door, and it's, as Rumi would say, you know, it's your remedy.
Wow, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say after this. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. I thought you were gonna give us some answers. But I think I'm gonna need more time to I'm gonna need more time to digest this one for sure. But I do agree. I think that we need to step away from the phones and the media. I think that is a lot of what consumes us, and we feel like, you know, we need to be out there all the time. And I'm not saying not to be out there. I mean, it's a huge vehicle to spread information and to connect with people you otherwise wouldn't. But the people around us, you know, we also need to be with them, and that can only happen when we're actually present physically. And, you know, away from this virtual, like, I guess, what is your opinion, Sister Zahraa, on this like whole virtual, I mean, we're moving towards a world where like there's gonna be virtual reality, augmented reality. It's more and more like becoming like the world between the digital and the physical is just becoming blurred. I guess, how do we, like, you know, not let that affect our spiritual, our nafs, our inner, our hearts?
Like you said, phones, technology have a way of consuming us. They have a way of numbing us as well. And if we just take a single look, I mean, honestly, technology has so many factors. It's a great platform for spreading awareness and also becoming aware. And it's also great for keeping in touch. Like, I'm here in Lebanon and my family's all abroad. And so technology has been great to just sort of keeping that bridge there. And it connects so many of us. It connects you and I, and it connects just, you know, everyone across the globe. It's great. However, I think that it's really numbing. And I think one way to really bring that to light is just to look at the Holy Quran and see what it says, how many times it calls for reflection upon the signs of God. And what are the signs of God? The oceans, the trees, the changing of the night, the seasons, the sunrise, the sunset. And how many of us actually stare at the night sky? How many of us sit on the grass and feel nature? How many of us are actually internalizing these signs of God that are all created to lead us back to both our souls and therefore lead us back to God? And God even tells, he in his Hadith Qudsi, he speaks to us and he says, "O son of Adam, I've created the entire world for you, but I created you for me." So one way our technology is sort of taking that away from us is that we're actually creating our own virtual world, but we're turning away from the world that, you know, of nature, the world of God's signs. And so that's something that we really have to be attentive to, especially with our children, you know, inshallah, when we have families and kids. Really the best way of getting them to understand creation and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his beauty and his love is to help them be in touch with nature. Feel the dirt, feel the grass, see the sunrise, watch the stars. These are camping trips. These are all so important. And technology has a way of taking that away from us. It's just a brute fact.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Sister Zahraa, for taking your time to join us in this conversation. I hope to be having many more with you. I think this is so important, especially as we navigate through our lives. We're all, I know I am, we're all searching for something deeper, you know, and we see a lot of things happening around us, and then we are awakening and we're questioning, you know, why are we here? What are we doing? What should we be doing? And it's important to always, you know, like, check in with yourself, like you said, align yourself up and find out, you know, what your purpose is, because everyone's purpose is so unique and it's so beautiful to them. Nobody else has what every single individual has. So I think that, you know, hopefully we can keep exploring more together, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. God bless you, and may you keep doing the work that you're doing.
Inshallah. I mean, all right, take care, guys, and I'll see you next time. Stay brave, stay free.